But other than that, like as far as how they're related or anything else, I think they're two totally different animals. I think Toho, I think the majority of the fish, the biggest majority of the fish, never ever ever come to the bank. They don't. This is the point right here where I actually had some bites, and I decide I'm not sticking anything. This was the last day of practice, and I didn't want to stick any fish at all. So I'm literally using a hitchhiker on my worm, and that way there's no way I can get a hook in these fish. And I want you to notice how once I get a bite off a place, you'll see me probably drop a waypoint, but then I'm checking everything in that area to see how many bites. I'm looking for multiple bites without my boat moving. That's what I'm looking for. I want an area that's got a congregation of fish, something that's pushed. By this point, I realize that the spawn has come and that there are some fish that have pushed. And when we say push, we mean like literally pushed all the way to the quote, quote, hill. These fish weren't on the hill. These fish were on pad stems. But definitely males thinking about spawning. And I'm looking for a group of them and hopefully a couple of females with them. I drill all the way out to the middle of the lake, and they live more in the pads and on the bank than those fish up there. I mean, I think that's the big difference. I mean, that's a clear, shallow, deep grass lake. I mean, it's got grass all the way across the middle of it, and those fish just they don't leave. Just like Harris Chain was that year when we were there, and all those fish were out there spawning in the middle of the lake. Guys were catching them out of that hydrilla with worms. Those were spawners that were 10 foot deep or 8 foot deep. I think this lake gets a lot bigger shallow push from all the population. And I think the big ones spawn deeper here than the little ones. I think they like that, 3 to 5 foot in the pad. See, I just had a bite of pad. One of the other things that you're going to see us fishing down here is I like these deals that are called arrowheads. Some people call them mother-in-law tongues. They're long and sharp edged, and they've got a sharp point to them, and they call them mother-in-law tongue. They grow potentially, most of the time they're real shallow, so they grow the closest to the bank, so like a foot of water on them. The lake was a little higher this year than what I have seen it down there in the past, so some of them might even had 2 foot of water on them and we're just barely sticking out of the water, but they tend to grow in little clumps, isolated clumps, and the bass will use those to spawn also or make their bed next to. And it's a hard something to back up to and fan. And anyway, it's one of my favorite things to fish down there, and the arrowheads are just a really cool deal. I want you to look and point out some arrowheads here. You'll see them. They're the real green pointed and kind of clumpy looking. They weren't real successful this week for me. I had one day in practice swimming a worm where I had a stretch of them that I caught 5 or 6 off, or I had 5 or 6 bites off of. I didn't catch them, but I had 5 or 6 bites swimming a worm by, and it's something that I really like to look for down there. It's a pattern that I really, really like to run, but it wasn't as big a player this week. But I just wanted to point it out because they are one of my favorite vegetations in Florida for sure to fish, especially in the spring.
Plates stacked, so they were going up Dash Mount. That the front of the canvas will hold a 16, but they say to secure it, you put this metal plate down that has 2 stackable. One's real low profile and the other one's stacked on top of it. So that's what we were planning on doing. And then it's an Ultrex trolling motor. So that's the only thing that kind of scares me about that. I've never had an Ultrex. I've always been a motor guy. But
on this video right here, I'm going to show you the actual importance of shaking off a fish. This was actually the day before the tournament started, so the very last day of practice. There is not a hook on this bait, and you will literally see my rod double. Where this bite happens, I have no other bites around it. It's the only bite I had 500 yards or 200 yards leading up to it and 200 yards after I left. Like, there was no multiple bites. This was it. It was the one bite. And you'll see that it was either a big bass or it was an alligator. Like, there's no in between. It was bigger. It's not a 4-pounder doing this. This is a big fish. And so the morning of the tournament, I had to make a decision because I had some places that you could just sit in one spot and make 4 or 5 pitches and get 4 or 5 bites. This wasn't that place. And to start an event on the road 1,000 miles away from your house, a limit to start the day is pretty important. If you take a risk and you run to the big fish that's way off by itself, when you get to the place that you had 4 or 5 bites, guaranteed there's going to be boats sitting on it. And usually they're having a party because they're catching them. And so what I'm kind of leading into the story is a lot of times you make these decisions and they're not the right decision. You go to the big fish or what you think's a big fish. I mean, is it there? Is it not there? I mean, who really knows? I mean, I don't know. I had a feeling that this fish could potentially be spawning. I couldn't see it. Just the way that she was set up and the way that she bit, I thought there was potential that she might be sitting on a bed on a pad stem. And the next morning I was sitting in the lock and I had to decide, where am I going? Am I going to go to the group of fish and catch a limit and then possibly go to her? Maybe nobody found her. She was by herself. Is she even there? Who knows? And I decided to go to her, and it ended up being the right decision. But it was coin flip. I still don't know what to tell you, but I got there and I went straight to this fish. And then you know, obviously some of you've seen the video already, but you'll see it again. That 8-pounder was there the next day, and it was the first place that I went. She was probably about the 5th cast that I made, but it was the first cast that I actually made to the exact same pad stem that I had shooken her off of the day before. And it's a really cool. I got really excited. That's why I was so fired up. If that fish would have come, I mean, anybody's gonna be excited about a big fish, but to take that sacrifice first thing in the morning and that chance, knowing that you're giving up something else to go get that and not even know if it is or isn't going to be there, or if it is or isn't a bass. I mean, I guess it could have been a catfish, possibly. I mean, the odds of that probably weren't that good, but I knew it wasn't an alligator. I was just joking, but it was a big deal, and it got me started, and you know, that's what Florida's about, and that's the decision I finally made in the lock is that Florida is about that big bite, and so I chased it, and as you'll see, it works out. Oh my God, I got her. Hey, don't you come off there. Come here. Come here. Come here. That's how you start the BASS Open right there. Whoa! Look at that chunk. Way to start the day, baby. Look at that, dude.
That is awesome.
Well, as you can see, it's a pretty good way to start 2020. I mean, man, it didn't get much better than that big fish right there. I want to go through some of the tackle and stuff that I use, starting with the video that you just watched. I had 2 or 3 rods that I used primarily in Florida, starting with the worm rod that I used. This is a Falcon lowrider Amistad. If you guys watch very many of my videos, I throw Amistads for lots of things. It's a 7'3" medium heavy rod. It's pretty versatile. You can use it across the board for lots of things. I think the one that the video was actually on was an expert, not a lowrider, but it doesn't matter to me. They're the same. The worm that I was using, this is a Speed Vibe worm. It's got the cut tail. Lots of companies make these companies. This one just happens to be a Zoom. I do prefer the Magnum over the other one. I feel like that with the Magnum that I get the opportunity to possibly get bigger bites. And so if I can get away with the big one, I do throw the little one a lot too. Generally in June bug down in Florida. This is a 5-aught EWG hook made by Hayabusa. It is a 959 or a 595 959. The 956 is a smaller diameter hook than this hook is. This is a 5-aught. A lot of the guys like the straight shank when they're worm fishing. I get it. I know that they throw it a lot. This is something I've used for a long time and it works for me. If there's a piece of advice I can give you is that no matter what the masses are using, if you have something that's worked for you for years, if you change, you're not going to be happy. I've been there and done that. I'm throwing this on 22-pound fluorocarbon shooter. This is Sunline that I've used for a long time. I've got a lot of confidence in it. Some of the guys were using braid. I just feel like that I get more bites in those sparse pads with fluorocarbon than I do braid. Pegging it with a 1/4 or 3/8 ounce range tungsten, and it is pegged. The peg is right here down on the hook. Keeps that weight down with the worm in contact whenever I'm swimming it or if I'm throwing it up into a pat field. That pretty much covers my worm. The chatterbait that you saw in some of the videos, some of the earlier videos, I caught a pretty nice fish on a chatter. I throw it on a Falcon Expert. This is a cranking rod. It's called the Deep Diver. It is a 7'8" rod. So the length is what's big here for me. The fact that it's a lighter action and a long rod so that I can make long casts. I like to get this bait way out in front of the boat. I'm throwing it on 50-pound FX2 Sunline braid. I do throw the chatterbait on fluorocarbon, and it's probably 50-50 of the time. If I can get away with braid, I prefer to throw it on braid. That's just kind of my preference. I do like it on braid though sometimes. This is just a 1/2 ounce chatterbait, nothing fancy about it, with a green pumpkin trailer. That's just a fluke style. It's got a little green pumpkin or a chartreuse tail where I was dipping the tail. This is a bite that I really was looking forward to happen down there, and I just never really got going. I couldn't find a place where I can just sit and catch them like some of the guys did in Toho. And last but not least, my favorite rod. This is my punching rod, big weight. This is the Falcon flipping and punching rod. It's an 8-footer. It's in the Expert series. The rod is very important. Anytime that I'm flipping or pitching mats, it's a big part of the puzzle. This is always on 80-pound FX2 braid because I've usually got my drag set on get in the boat, which means it's as tight as it'll go. The weight that I'm using in the system here, this is a 1.25 ounce range tungsten. It's pegged down on the hook on a 4-aught straight shank FPP Hayabusa. If you guys have been trying the new Hayabusas last year, this is a brand new hook that just came out in January. We had the FPPs last year. This is a larger diameter. It's an HD FPP. Less flex, less stretch with the braided line. The FPP from last year we were having some issues with on these big rods and big weights. And last but not least, with all this little, is this new bait by Big Bite. It's Kamikaze Crawl. The reason I'm so crazy about it is because see how little and compact that dude is? In and out of mats. Punch it in. I'm looking for a bait that doesn't get hung up on the top of the mat. I want something that goes in, comes out, goes in, goes out. And I love this little dude because it's got these 2 flappers. It's got lots of flapping action once it goes through the mat. And it seems to be a pretty successful little bait. So far, so good with that new one. Guys, that's pretty much it. If you're still watching at this point, I really do appreciate you making it through this far. I know you guys have got lots of options on YouTube and really appreciate you watching me. Give me a subscribe. Leave all the comments, guys. I answer as many as I can. I love getting comments on all the videos. That's pretty much it. I've got another video coming out. It'll be an awesome video about the tournament coming out next 3 or 4 days. And I think from there, we're out of here.